Welcome, weary traveler. Come in from the cold, from the noise of the world, from whatever has kept you restless tonight. You have found the candlelit journal, a place of quiet stories, of firelight and snow, of strangers passing through a crossroads and in a land that time has forgotten. Tonight, I will read to you from the innkeeper's diary. These are his words, written by candlelight after the guests have retired, after the fire has settled into embers, after the world outside has grown still. Tonight's entry tells the story of a minstrel, a man with a chipped lute and a voice worn soft by years of wandering, who arrived at the inn one autumn evening and did not leave until the snow had melted. So settle in. Let your breathing slow. The fire is warm, the hour is late, and the innkeeper has much to tell you.
The 23rd day of the harvest moon. The leaves have begun their slow surrender. I noticed it this morning when I stepped outside to draw water from the well. The oak tree at the crossroads has turned, its great canopy now a tapestry of amber and rust and deep burgundy. A few leaves skittered across the road as I walked, making that dry whispering sound that always marks the changing of the season. The inn has been quiet these past days. The harvest caravans passed through last week, heavy wagons groaning under the weight of barley and gourds and late apples, their drivers too exhausted to do more than eat and sleep before pressing on toward the lowland markets. Now the crossroads sits empty for long stretches, the road waiting between the rush of autumn trade and the slower, more deliberate travel of winter. I have used the stillness to prepare. The woodshed is nearly full now. I spent 3 days splitting logs until my shoulders ached and my palms grew rough with new calluses. The root cellar has been restocked with turnips and carrots, and last of the onions from the kitchen garden. I have mended the shutter on the second private room that has been rattling since midsummer, and I have patched the place where the stable roof was beginning to let in rain. The white candle burns on the mantel as it always does, its flame steady and unwavering. Sometimes I find myself watching it when the common room is empty, that pale light that never diminishes no matter how long it burns. The old woman who gave it to me, she who walked upon the snow as though it were solid stone, told me this place would be needed, that there would be many who required what I offered. I think of her words often as the seasons turn. This evening, as the sun was setting and painting the clouds in shades of rose and gold, a man come walking up the eastern road. I saw him from the window while I was wiping down the tables. He moved slowly, not with the urgency of someone seeking shelter before dark, but with the measured pace of one who has been walking for a very long time and has learned that haste serves no purpose. He carried a pack on his back and something long and wrapped in cloth beneath his arm. When he reached the door, he paused. I watched him through the window as he stood there looking up at the inn sign, a simple carved lantern that my father made in the year before I was born, and then at the ancient oak tree at the crossroads. He seemed to be considering something, weighing some internal question. Then he pushed open the door and stepped inside. He was perhaps 40 years of age, though the road has a way of making men look older than their years. His hair was the color of autumn itself, brown shot through with gray, like dead leaves mixed with iron. His face was weathered, lined, carved deep around his eyes and mouth, the kind of face that has seen much sun and wind and rain. His clothes were well made but worn, the sort of garments that were thin once and have been carefully mended many times since. "Good evening," I said, setting down my cloth. "You are welcome here." He nodded, his eyes moving around the common room, taking in the fire crackling in the great stone hearth, the herbs hanging from the rafters, the empty tables waiting for guests who had not yet arrived. His gaze lingered on the white candle burning on the mantel. "A quiet place," he said. His voice was low and musical, the kind of voice that carries even when speaking softly. "I had heard there was an inn at the crossroads. I did not expect it to feel so." He paused, searching for the word. "Settled. The crossroads has been here longer than the inn," I said. "But the inn has been here long enough." He smiled at that, a small smile that deepened the lines around his eyes. A fair answer. He unslung his pack and set it on the floor, then carefully unwrapped the object he had been carrying beneath his arm. It was a lute, not a new instrument, far from it. The wood was dark with age and use, the finish worn away in places where hands had rested countless times. One of the tuning pegs had been replaced with wood of a different color, and there was a chip near the base of the neck, a small piece misting, as though something had struck it long ago. "I am a minstrel," he said, which was already evident. Or I was, or I am still. The definition grows unclear after so many years. He held the lute as one might hold something precious and fragile, despite its obvious sturdiness. "My name is Aldric. I've been walking for a long time, and I find myself in need of rest." "Then you have come to the right place," I said. "Will you be staying the night?" He looked at the lute in his hands, then at the fire, then at the window where the last light of day was fading into purple dusk. "I think," he said slowly, "I may be staying rather longer than a night, if you will have me." There was something in the way he said it, not a plea, but not quite a statement either. A question wrapped in certainty, as though he already knew what my answer would be, but felt obligated to ask regardless. I sensed in that moment something I had felt rarely in all my years of keeping the inn, a sense of significance, of a moment that would matter far beyond its simple appearance. This was not just a traveler seeking shelter. This was something more, though I could not have said what. "The private rooms are 3 coppers a night," I said. "The common pallets are 1. Meals are included, and there is stable space if you have a horse." "No horse," he said. "I have been walking and—" He hesitated, reaching into his pack and withdrawing a small leather purse. When he opened it, I could see it contained only a handful of coins. Copper, mostly, with perhaps 3 or 4 silver pieces mixed in, not enough for more than a week or 2. "I have not much, but I can offer something else, if you would consider it." "What would that be?" He lifted the lute. "Music. I have played in the courts of 3 kingdoms and the taverns of 100 villages. I know songs from the eastern coast and the northern mountains, ballads of love and loss and heroic deeds, drinking songs and lullabies and everything between. He ran his thumb across the strings, and even that simple gesture produced a sound of surprising sweetness. I could play for your guests, bring a bit of warmth to cold evenings. It might encourage travelers to stay longer, drink more, speak more freely. I considered his offer. The truth was, the inn had never had a minstrel. My father had not been a musical man, and I myself can barely carry a tune. The common room in winter could grow quiet, not unpleasantly so, but quiet nonetheless. Travelers huddled near the fire, speaking in low voices, or not at all. The only sounds a crack of burning logs and the whisper of wind against the shutters. I will make you an offer, I said. You may stay in the smaller private room, the one that looks toward the east. You will receive meals and a share of whatever ale is poured. In exchange, you will play when guests are present, for as long as you wish to stay. When you are ready to move on, you will owe nothing. He stared at me for a long moment, and I saw something shift in his expression. Surprise, perhaps, or relief, or something more complex that I could not name. That is a generous offer, he said quietly. It is a fair offer, I corrected. Music has value. So does company in the long months of winter. He extended his hand, and I shook it. His palm was calloused in patterns I did not recognize, not the calluses of labor or farming, but something different. The marks of a lifetime spent pressing strings against frets. Then I accept, he said, and I thank you. I showed him to his room, the smaller of the two private chambers, with its narrow bed and its window facing east toward the distant mountains. He set down his pack and his lute and stood for a moment looking out at the darkening sky. The sunrise must be something to see from here, he said. It is, I agreed, rose and gold spreading across the peaks. My father built this inn to face the morning light. He said it was important to begin each day reminded that beauty exists. Aldric nodded slowly, still looking out the window. Your father sounds like a wise man. He was, I said. He died some years ago. A fever took him in the winter. I am sorry. So am I. I paused at the doorway. Supper will be ready within the hour. Root vegetable stew tonight with fresh bread. You are welcome to eat in the common room or here, as you prefer. The common room, he said without hesitation. I have eaten alone for too many nights. I left him to settle in and returned downstairs to tend to the stew. As I stirred the pot, listening to the bubble and simmer of vegetables softening in broth, I found myself wondering about this man, this minstrel, who had appeared at my door with empty pockets and a worn lute and an offer of music in exchange for shelter. What brings a man to such a crossroads? What empties his purse and fills his instrument with songs? What makes him seek rest after so many years of wandering? I did not ask. The questions were his to answer or not, in his own time. My role was to offer shelter, warmth, food. The rest would come as it would. That night, he played. There were no other guests. Just the two of us in the great common room, the fire burning bright, the white candles steady on the mantel. He sat near the hearth with his lute across his lap, and he played without speaking, without announcing what he would perform or why. The first song was slow and mournful, a melody that seemed to rise from the strings like smoke rising from wet wood. It spoke of loss, not dramatic loss, not the loss of battles or kingdoms, but the quiet loss of things that slip away while we are not paying attention. Friendships that fade, dreams that dissolve, years that pass before we notice they have gone. I sat at the table nearest the fire, a mug of cider warming my hands, and I listened. The music filled the common room in a way that voices never quite manage, reaching into corners and settling into the spaces between the stones of the walls. I found my thoughts drifting to my father, to my mother, who I never knew, to the travelers who had passed through this inn over the years, and whom I would never see again. The song ended, and Aldric did not speak. He simply shifted his fingers on the frets and began another, this one lighter, almost playful, a dancing tune that made me think of spring festivals and flowers blooming in meadows. Then another and another, each one different, each one seeming to respond to some invisible need in the room. He played for perhaps an hour before setting the lute aside. When he looked up at me, his eyes were tired but peaceful. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For listening. It has been a long time since I played for someone who truly listened." I did not know what to say to that, so I said nothing. But I understood in that moment that this man had needed to find this place as much as I had needed to offer it. The 25th day of the harvest moon, it has been 2 days since Aldric arrived, and already I have learned more about music than I knew in all my previous years combined. I watched him this morning as he sat in the corner of the common room, the pale autumn light falling through the window onto his hands as they moved across the strings. He was not playing for anyone. The inn was empty, the road quiet, but he played nonetheless, working through patterns and progressions that seemed to have no beginning and no end. "Scales," he said when he noticed me watching. "The foundation of everything. Even after 30 years, I practice them every day. Every day, without exception." He played a series of ascending notes, each one precise and clear. Music is like water. If you do not tend it, it stagnates. The fingers grow stiff. The ear grows dull. The connection between mind and instrument grows weak. But if you practice, if you return to the basics day after day, the music stays alive. I thought about this as I went about my morning tasks, sweeping the common room floor, checking the stores in the kitchen, splitting wood for the evening fire. There was wisdom in his words that applied to more than music. Was not innkeeping the same? The daily rituals of cleaning and cooking and preparing. Were they not the scales I practiced, the foundation upon which everything else was built? Aldric joined me for the midday meal, and we ate together in companionable silence. The stew was yesterday's, reheated and thickened with fresh barley, and the bread was fresh from the clay oven, still warm enough that the butter melted when I spread it. "You keep a good table," he said. "I have eaten in fine houses where the food was not half so satisfying. My father taught me. He said that a meal shared is a bond formed, and that an innkeeper who serves poor food is breaking a sacred trust. Your father sounds like he understood the deeper meanings of things." He did. He understood that people come to an inn for more than a bed. They come for warmth, for welcome, for the sense that someone sees them as more than a paying guest. I paused, realizing I had never spoken these thoughts aloud before. I try to honor that understanding. I try to see each traveler as he would have seen them. Aldric nodded slowly. "That is why this place feels different. That is why I could sleep peacefully for the first time in months." He set down his spoon and looked at me directly. "You do not just run an inn, you tend a sanctuary." The word sat heavy in the air between us. Sanctuary. I had never thought of it that way, but he was right. The Crossroads Inn was a sanctuary, a place set apart from the rush and worry of the world, where travelers could lay down their burdens and simply be. That evening, a pair of traders arrived just before sunset. They were sisters, I learned, twins in fact, though they looked nothing alike. One was tall and fair, with hair the color of ripe wheat. The other was shorter and darker, with sharp features and watchful eyes. They traded in herbs and medicines, traveling between the mountain villages where rare plants grew and the lowland towns where physicians paid good coin for remedies. They had heard of the minstrel, they said. Word had reached them in a village 2 days' journey to the south, where a passing merchant had mentioned the music at the Crossroads Inn. They had altered their route specifically to hear him play. Aldric seemed surprised by this, though not displeased. "Word travels faster than I do," he said with a wry smile. "Music travels faster than anything," the fair-haired sister replied. "Our mother used to say that songs have wings." That night, Aldric played for them. He began with a lively tune that set feet tapping and hands clapping, a festival song from the eastern coast that spoke of sailing ships and rolling waves. The sisters laughed and swayed in their seats, and even I found myself moving to the rhythm, wiping down tables in time with the beat. Then he shifted to something slower, a ballad about an herbalist who traveled the world gathering plants to heal the sick. The sisters grew still as they listened, their eyes wet. When the song ended, the dark-haired sister asked if he would teach her the words. "Our mother was an herbalist," she explained. "She taught us everything we know. She passed 3 winters ago, and we still miss her. That song. It was as though you wrote it for her." Aldric's voice was gentle when he replied, I did not write. And it was old when my father taught it to me, but music has a way of becoming what we need it to be. The song is not about your mother, but it can carry your memory of her. That is the gift of music. It makes room for our sorrows and our joys alike. He taught her the words line by line, and by the end of the evening, the three of them were singing together. Aldric's voice low and steady, the sisters' voices twining above and below it like vines around a trellis. The sound filled the common room and spilled out through the cracks in the shutters, rising into the cold autumn night. I listened from the kitchen doorway, my hands wrapped around a mug of tea that had long since grown cold. There was something sacred in that moment. Three strangers connected through music, sharing grief and comfort in equal measure. The white candle on the mantel seemed to burn a little brighter, though perhaps that was only my imagination. The sisters stayed for 2 nights. When they left, they pressed a small bundle of dried herbs into Aldric's hands. Chamomile for sleep, lavender for calm, rosemary for memory. For your travels, the dark-haired sister said, may they bring you peace. Aldric accepted the gift with a bow of his head. May your mother's spirit walk beside you, he said, and may you always find shelter when the road grows long. I do not know if he intended the echo of my own father's words, but I felt it nonetheless. The 29th day of the harvest moon. Nearly a week has passed since Aldric arrived, and the inn has transformed in subtle ways. It is not that anything is physically changed. The tables still sit in their usual places. The fire still burns in the hearth. The white candle still glows undiminished on the mantel. But there is a quality to the common room now that was not there before, a sense of anticipation that hangs in the air even when the room is empty. Word has begun to spread, as word always does in small communities. A minstrel at the Crossroads Inn, a man who plays songs from distant lands, who knows ballads that no one has heard in years. The first traveler to arrive after Aldric came was a peddler named Garrett, a man I have seen perhaps a dozen times over the years. He usually stays one night, eats quickly, speaks little, and leaves before dawn. This time, he stayed 3 nights. I watched his face on that first evening when Aldric began to play. Garrett was sitting alone at a table near the kitchen doorway, working through a bowl of stew with the mechanical efficiency of someone who eats to sustain themselves rather than for pleasure. When the music started, he paused with his spoon halfway to his mouth. The song was an old one. Aldric told me later it was called The Miller's Daughter, and it told the story of a young woman who falls in love with a traveling merchant who passes through her village. Each spring, the melody was simple but haunting, and Aldric's voice when he sang was rough and warm, like wool that has been worn soft with use. Garrett set down his spoon and listened. He did not move again until the song was finished, and even then he sat motionless for a long moment before picking up his bowl and resuming his meal. Later that night, after Aldric had retired to his room, Garrett approached me at the bar. "That one," he said, "the one about the miller's daughter. My grandmother used to sing it when I was a boy. I had completely forgotten that song existed until tonight." His eyes were wet, though no tears fell. I poured him a small measure of wine and did not charge him for it. "Music has a way of finding things we have lost," I said. He nodded slowly. "I think I will stay another night, if that is acceptable." "Of course." He stayed 2 more nights after that, and on the second night he asked Aldric if he knew any songs from the eastern coast. Aldric knew 7, and Garrett listened to all of them with the intensity of a man seeing his childhood home after decades away. Word continued to spread. By the end of Aldric's first week, I began to see faces I did not recognize, travelers who had detoured from their planned routes to stop at the Crossroads Inn, drawn by rumors of the minstrel who played through the cold autumn nights. A merchant couple from the southern lowlands stayed 3 nights on their way to the mountain trading posts. A young scholar traveling to study at a monastery in the north spent an entire evening asking Aldric about the historical accuracy of his ballads. A pair of sisters, returning home from visiting relatives, wept openly during a love song about 2 people separated by war. The common room has grown warmer somehow, fuller. Even when there are only a few guests, the space feels populated in a way it did not before, as though the music has invited invisible presences to gather near the fire and listen alongside the living. I find myself working later than usual, lingering in the common room after the tables have been cleared and the dishes washed, listening to Aldric play. He seems to require no audience to perform. He plays as naturally as breathing, the music emerging from his fingers as though it has always been there, waiting to be released. One evening, when the common room was empty, except for the 2 of us, I asked him about his lute. "It was my father," he said, running his hand along the worn wood, "and his father's before him. 3 generations of minstrels, each adding their marks to the instrument." He pointed to the chip near the base of the neck. "This happened when I was 16. I was performing at a feast, my first real performance, in a minor noble's hall, and I was so nervous that my hands were shaking. I bumped against a table and the lute struck the edge of a silver platter. It must have been frightening," I said. "Terrifying," he agreed. "I thought my father would be furious. Instead, he looked at the chip and said, 'Good. Now it has a story that belongs to you alone.'" He smiled at the memory, his fingers absently plucking a soft chord. "I have added many stories since then. This lute has been dropped in rivers and rescued from fires. It has traveled across mountains and seas. It has played for kings and for beggars, in grand halls and in muddy ditches. And now it plays in a crossroads inn. And now it plays in a crossroads inn," he repeated, and there was no trace of disappointment in his voice. If anything, he sounded satisfied. "I think this may be the best place it has ever played," The 7th day of the frost moon, autumn has deepened. The oak tree at the crossroads has shed most of its leaves now, and they lie in drifts against the stable wall and along the edges of the road. The mornings have grown cold enough that ice forms on the water in the horse trough, thin sheets that I break with a stick before the travelers' horses are led out to drink. Aldric has been with us for nearly a month now, and he has become as much a part of the inn as the fire in the hearth or the white candle on the mantel. Guests expect to see him when they arrive, expect to hear him play after supper, expect to find him sitting near the fire in the quiet hours of the morning, working through takils and practice pieces that sound like conversations with the lute itself. He has begun to teach me things, not music. I have no talent for it, and he recognized this immediately, but other things. Stories, history, the geography of distant lands that I will never visit. This song, he said one evening, playing a melody that sounded like water running over stones, comes from a kingdom beyond the eastern sea. They worship a goddess of rivers there, and this is sung during the spring floods when the waters rise and bring new soil to the fields. Or, this ballad tells the story of a war that happened 300 years ago between two brothers who both claimed the throne of a northern kingdom. The war lasted 7 years and ended when both brothers died on the same day in the same battle by each other's hands. Some say their ghosts still wander the battlefield, forever fighting, or this is a lullaby from the mountain villages in the far north. The words are in a language that has been dead for centuries, but the melody survives. It is said that children who hear this song sleep without dreams. I have begun writing down these stories in my diary, preserving them as best I can. It seems important somehow to keep a record, not just of the events that transpire at the inn, but of the knowledge that passes through it. The travelers bring news and gossip, but Aldric brings something deeper, a sense of the vast world beyond the crossroads, the centuries of human experience that have accumulated in songs and ballads and half-remembered tales. Something changed last week. A group of travelers arrived together, 4 merchants traveling in a small caravan, their wagons loaded with cloth and spices bound for the frontier settlements in the west. They were loud men, boisterous and full of themselves, the kind of travelers who treat an inn as a stage for their own performance rather than a place of rest. The leader of the group, a large man with a red face and a voice that seemed incapable of speaking below a shout, demanded food and drink the moment he walked through the door. He complained about the temperature of the stew, the hardness of the bread, the quality of the ale. When Aldric began to play, the man talked over the music, telling jokes and stories to his companions in a voice loud enough to drown out the lute. I watched Aldric's face during this. He did not stop playing, but something closed behind his eyes. A door shutting, a light dimming. The music continued, but it had lost something essential, some quality of presence and connection that I had not consciously noticed until it was gone. The merchants stayed 2 nights. They paid their bills without argument, tipped generously, and left at dawn on the third day, their wagons creaking away down the western road. When they were gone, Aldric sat alone in the common room, not playing, simply holding his lute and staring into the fire. "I should apologize," I said, sitting down across from him. He looked up, surprised. "For what?" "I should have asked them to be quieter. They were disrespectful." Aldric shook his head slowly. "No, you were right not to interfere. They were guests, same as any other. They paid for their meals and their beds. They owed nothing more." He paused, his fingers tracing the edge of the sound hole. "Besides, it is an old wound. I should be accustomed to it by now." "What wound?" He was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "I told you I played in the courts of 3 kingdoms. What I did not tell you is why I stopped. I waited, saying nothing. I was young," he said, "talented, or so I believed. I rose quickly from village festivals to noble halls to the royal court itself. I played for kings and queens, for princes and princesses, for lords and ladies whose names are recorded in history books. I thought I had achieved everything a minstrel could hope to achieve." He plucked a single string, a low note that hung in the air like smoke. "But the court is a hungry place. It wants more than music. It wants entertainment, novelty, spectacle." They grew bored with my ballads and demanded new songs, louder songs, songs that sparkled and dazzled rather than moved. They wanted me to play faster, to add flourishes, to turn music into performance. "And you refused?" "I tried to refuse, but you cannot refuse a king not for long." He set the lute aside and rubbed his hands together as though they were dead. "I became what they wanted. I learned to play for applause rather than for truth. I wrote songs that were clever rather than meaningful. I became very successful and very empty. And one day I woke up and could not remember why I had ever wanted to play music in the first place." The fire crackled in the silence that followed. Outside I could hear the wind picking up, rattling the shutters. "So, you left," I said. "So, I left. I walked out of the palace without a word, without permission, without explanation. I took nothing but my father's lute and the clothes on my back. I have been walking ever since, 5 years now, playing in taverns and marketplaces, trying to remember what music is supposed to be, trying to find the feeling I had when I first held this instrument, when every note was a discovery and every song was a gift." "Have you found it?" He looked at me then, and his eyes were bright in the firelight. "I think I'm beginning to," he said. "Here, in this place, with listeners who ask for nothing except the music itself." He picked up the lute again and cuddled it against his chest. "That is why those merchants wounded me, though they did not know it, and bore no malice. They reminded me of what I was running from. The world that sees music as background noise, as entertainment to be talked over, as wallpaper for conversations that matter more than any song ever could. I thought about this for a long time that night, lying in my bed in the small room beneath the pitch of the roof, listening to the wind and the creak of the building settling around me. What is music? What is any art, any creation, any offering of beauty to the world? Is it merely entertainment, a pleasant distraction from the hard work of living? Or is it something more, a language that speaks to parts of us that words cannot reach, a bridge between souls that would otherwise remain isolated in their separate bodies? I do not know. I am an innkeeper, not a philosopher. But I know that when Aldric plays, something happens in this room that does not happen at any other time. The fire seems warmer. The shadows seem softer. The travelers who listen carry something away with them when they leave, not a song exactly, but the memory of having been touched, something larger than themselves. Perhaps that is enough. Perhaps that is everything. The second day of the frost moon. There is a quality to early November light that I've always loved. It slants through the windows at a lower angle than in summer, casting long shadows across the common room floor. The light seems thicker somehow, more golden, as though the sun itself knows that its warmth is precious now and must be savored while it lasts. Aldric noticed it too. "The light here is different," he said this morning, pausing in his practice to look toward the window. "It has weight to it, presence. My father used to say that autumn light was honest light. Summer light hides things in its brightness, but autumn light reveals. Your father was a philosopher. He was an innkeeper, but perhaps all innkeepers are philosophers in their way. We watch people, we listen. We cannot help but think about what we see and hear." The conversation turned, as conversations with Aldric often do, to stories. He told me about an inn he had visited in the far north, where the light in winter came only in brief purple twilights, and the people burned whale oil in their lamps. He told me about a desert kingdom in the south, where the light was so harsh that people slept during the day and lived their lives by moonlight. He told me about a forest village, where the trees grew so thick that even at noon the light was green and dim, filtered through countless leaves. Each story was a window into a world I would never see. I found myself leaning forward, forgetting the bread I was supposed to be slicing, forgetting everything but the images his words conjured in my mind. "You've been to so many places," I said when he paused. "Have you ever wanted to stay, to stop traveling and make a home somewhere?" He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "When I was young, I thought that home was a place, a building, a town, a kingdom. I thought that if I could just find the right place, I would know it, and I would stop forever. And now? Now, I think that home is not a place at all. It is a feeling, a sense of belonging, of being seen and accepted. I have felt it in palaces, and I have felt it in roadside ditches. I have felt it alone, and I have felt it in crowd." He looked around the common room at the fireplace and the hanging herbs and the white candle on the mantel. I feel it here. I did not know what to say to that. The words landed in my chest like stones dropped into still water, sending ripples outward that I did not fully understand. That afternoon, a young man arrived on horseback. He was perhaps 18, with the kind of nervous energy that comes from being sent on an important errand. He carried letters, he said, messages from a merchant house in the lowlands to their agents in the frontier settlements. The messages were urgent, which was why he was traveling in November rather than waiting for spring. He ate quickly, asked for directions to the western road, and was clearly preparing to leave when Aldric began to play. It was an unusual choice of song, a marching tune, the kind of thing soldiers sing on long campaigns to keep their feet moving and their spirits up. The rhythm was steady and insistent, the melody simple but stirring. The young messenger stopped in the doorway, his hand on the latch. He listened for a verse, then two, then three. By the fourth verse, he had let go of the door and turned back toward the fire. "I know that song," he said. "My father sang it. He was a soldier before." He did not finish the sentence, but he did not need to. The losses of war are everywhere, written in the gaps where fathers and brothers and sons should be. Aldric nodded and kept playing. The song went on for several more verses, telling the story of soldiers far from home, marching through foreign lands, sustained only by thoughts of the families waiting for them. When it ended, the young messenger's eyes were dry, but his face was different, softer somehow, more open. "Thank you," he said. "I had forgotten that song. I had not thought about it in years. Songs remember for us," Aldric said. "Even when we forget, they hold the memories safe." The messenger stayed the night after all. He said the horses needed rest, which was true, but I think the real reason was simpler. He needed rest too. He needed to sit by the fire and listen to music and remember his father before facing the long, cold road ahead. The 14th day of the frost moon. Something happened yesterday that I am still trying to understand. A woman arrived in the late afternoon. She was neither young nor old, somewhere in the uncertain middle years, with gray beginning to thread through her dark hair and lines etched around her eyes and mouth. She was well dressed in clothes that spoke of comfort, if not wealth, and she carried herself with the careful dignity of someone who has learned to bear burdens without complaint. She asked for a room, ate her supper in silence, and retired early. I thought nothing of it. Many travelers prefer solitude, and I have learned not to take it personally. But late that night, I heard music. Not Aldric's lute. He had gone to bed hours earlier. This was a different sound, a woman's voice, singing softly, the words too quiet to make out. The melody was unfamiliar, haunting and strange, rising and falling like breath. I crept downstairs, moving carefully so as not to disturb anyone. The common room was empty, the fire banked to embers, the white candle burning steady on the mantel. but the singing continued, drifting down from the floor above. I stood at the bottom of the stairs and listened. The song was in a language I did not recognize, not the common tongue, not any of the neighboring dialects I had encountered. It sounded ancient, the syllables shaped by a mouth accustomed to different sounds. And then I heard something else, a second voice, joining the first. This voice was deeper, rougher, but it sang the same melody, the same strange words, a duet from a room where only one person slept. I do not know how long I stood there. The song eventually faded, trailing off into silence, and I heard nothing more. In the morning, I questioned my own memory. Had I dreamed it? Had the wind played tricks with sound, creating harmonies from a single voice? The woman came down for breakfast. She looked tired but peaceful, as though she had slept well despite the dark circles under her eyes. She ate bread and honey and drank tea brewed from mint and chamomile. "I hope the night was restful," I said. She looked at me for a long moment, and something flickered in her eyes. Recognition, perhaps, or understanding. "It was," she said, "more restful than it has been in a long time." She paused, then it added, "My husband passed 6 months ago. We used to sing together. Last night was the first time I've been able to sing since he died." I did not ask about the second voice. Some things are not meant to be questioned. She left after breakfast, heading south toward the lowlands. At the door, she turned back. "This is a good place," she said. "I can feel it. The walls hold something. I do not know what to call it. Kindness, maybe? Compassion." She smiled, and for a moment, she looked years younger. "Thank you for keeping it." After she was gone, I told Aldric what had happened. He listened without interrupting, his face thoughtful. "There are places," he said finally, "where the boundary between worlds grows thin, places where the living and the dead can almost touch. Often they are crossroads, places of transition, of choice, of change, of arc." He gestured toward the ancient oak tree visible through the window. I felt it when I arrived, a sense of presence, of something watching, not threatening, just attentive. The old woman who gave me the candle said something similar. She said there would be many who need what I offer. I always thought she meant shelter and food. Perhaps she did, or perhaps she meant something larger. Aldric picked up his lute and held it, not playing, just feeling its weight in his hands. "We are keepers of thresholds, you and I. You keep the threshold between the road and rest. I keep the threshold between silence and sound. Both are crossings that people need to make." I have thought about his words many times since. Keeper of the threshold, guardian of the crossing. It makes a strange kind of sense. The inn is a place where people pause between their before and their after, where they can set down their burdens and decide who they want to be when they pick them up again. The white candle burns on the mantel, and I wonder, what other crossings has this place witnessed? What other songs have been sung in these rooms, heard by ears both living and otherwise? I do not know, but I am beginning to suspect that I am part of something larger than a simple inn at a crossroads. The 21st day of the frost moon. Winter has arrived early this year. 2 days ago, the first snow fell. Not a heavy storm, but a quiet dusting that covered the crossroads and the stable roof and the bare branches of the ancient oak tree in a thin white blanket. More fell last night, and this morning I woke to a world transformed. The familiar shapes of the inn and the road and the distant hills all softened and muted beneath the snow. Aldric stood at his window for a long time this morning, watching the sunrise paint the snow in shades of pink and gold. When I brought him his breakfast, a bowl of porridge with honey and dried berries, he was still standing there, his breath misting against the cold glass. "It has been years since I watched a sunrise," he said, without turning around. Truly watched one, I mean. Without thinking about what I had to do next, where I had to go, what I had to perform. The view from that window was my father's favorite, I said. He used to say the mountains looked like sleeping giants, covered in snow. Aldrich smiled. I can see why. Travel has slowed, as it always does in winter, but it has not stopped entirely. The crossroads sees a steady trickle of hardy travelers, messengers bearing urgent letters that cannot wait for spring, merchants who trade in goods that keep their value regardless of season, pilgrims following paths that their faiths prescribe regardless of weather. They come into the inn stamping snow from their boots, shaking white powder from their cloaks, their cheeks flushed red from the cold. They settle near the fire with sighs of relief, wrapping their hands around mugs of hot cider or tea, letting the warmth seep back into their bones. And then, after supper, when the dishes have been cleared and the fire built up high and bright, Aldric plays. The winter songs are different from the autumn songs, slower perhaps, more contemplative, songs about endings and beginnings, about the sleep of the earth and the quiet that falls when the world holds its breath. Songs about hope in darkness, about lights that burn in the longest nights, about the certainty that spring will come again, even when it seems impossible to imagine. One evening, a courier arrived just before sunset. A young woman, barely 20, shivering so badly that her teeth chattered as she spoke. She was carrying letters to the frontier settlements, she said, letters from families who had not heard from their loved ones since before the harvest. She had been caught in a sudden squall on the road. Her horse had gone lame, and she had walked the last 5 miles through deepening snow. I gave her my warmest room, one of the common pallets near the chimney wall, where the stones hold heat through the night. I gave her extra blankets and a bowl of hot soup, and made sure her horse was tended and fed. But it was Aldric's music that seemed to restore her most. He played for hours that night, gentle songs, healing songs, songs that wrapped around the listener like a blanket and told them that they were safe, that the storm was outside and could not reach them here. The courier fell asleep in her chair near the fosse, and I did not wake her. Instead, I covered her with another blanket and let her rest while Aldric played on, softer now, barely more than a whisper of sound. In the morning, she pressed a silver coin into my hand and another into Aldric's. "I have heard minstrels in the great cities," she said. "I have heard performers who studied their craft in conservatories and academies. None of them played like you played last night. I do not know how to describe it, except to say that I felt held, as though the music was holding me." Aldric accepted the coin with a small bow. "Then I have succeeded," he said. "That is all music is supposed to do. Hold us when we cannot hold ourselves." She left that morning, her horse recovered enough to continue, the letters still undelivered, but her spirit restored. I watched her ride away down the snowy road, a small figure growing smaller against the white expanse, and I felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the fire. Later that day, I asked Aldric how he knew which songs to play, how he seemed to sense what each listener needed, when to play something lively and when to play something soothing, when to fill the room with sound and when to let the silences speak. He thought about the question for a long time. "I listen," he said finally. "Not to what people say, but to what they do not say. To the way they sit, the way they breathe, the tension in their shoulders, and the tiredness in their eyes. Every person who walks through that door is carrying something. Grief, hope, fear, longing, exhaustion. Most of them do not know how to name it. Some of them do not even know they are carrying it." He picked up his lute and held it without playing. "The music does not come from me," he said. "It comes through me. I am just the instrument that the song passes through on its way to the person who needs to hear it. If I listen well enough, if I pay attention, the right song will find its way. I have thought about this many times since. I think there is a lesson in it for me as well. A lesson about what it means to be an innkeeper, to be the keeper of a crossroads, to be the guardian of travelers between time. Perhaps my role is not so different from Aldric's. Perhaps I too am meant to listen, to pay attention, to sense what each traveler needs and provide it without being asked. A warm fire, a hot meal, a quiet room, a moment of peace in a restless world. The third day of the ice moon. The cold has deepened. Ice forms on the inside of the windows now, delicate patterns of frost that catch the morning light and scatter it into rainbows. The wood pile I built up so carefully in autumn is diminishing faster than I had hoped, and I have begun rationing how much I burn during the day, saving the larger logs for the long evenings when travelers gather near the fire. Aldric has adapted to the cold with a grace that surprises me. He wears fingerless gloves when he plays now, knitted from rough wool that he purchased from a traveling peddler, but his fingers seem no less nimble for the chill. If anything, he plays more in winter than he did in autumn. Longer sessions, more songs, as though the music itself provides warmth that compensates for the cold. "Music is a kind of fire," he told me one evening. "It burns without consuming. It gives heat without flame. When I play, I do not feel the cold as keenly. The body forgets its discomforts when the mind is focused elsewhere. We have fallen into a rhythm, he and I. Mornings are for practical tasks. I tend to the inn. He practices his scales and works on the new composition that still refuses to take final shape. Afternoons are for conversation, for sharing stories, for the quiet companionship that requires no words. Evenings are for music and for whatever travelers the road brings. Some days no one comes. The crossroads stands empty, the roads stretching away into snow-covered distance, not a soul visible in any direction. On those nights, Aldric plays just for me, or perhaps just for himself, or perhaps for the unknown presences that seem to gather when music fills the air. Other days, the inn is surprisingly busy. Travelers appear in clusters, having waited for a break in the weather to continue their journeys, all arriving at the crossroads within hours of each other. On those nights, the common room fills with voices and warmth, with the steam of drying cloaks and the smell of wet wool and horse, with the particular energy that comes from strangers sharing close quarters. Last week, a family arrived, a man, his wife, and 3 children, ranging in age from perhaps 5 to 12. They were moving west, they said, to join relatives who had established a homestead in the frontier lands. Everything they owned was packed into a single wagon, which had thrown a wheel on the frozen road a mile from the crossroads. The man was near despair. The repair would take days, he said. Days they could not afford. Their supplies were limited, their coin even more so. How would they feed their children? How would they keep them warm while the wagon was fixed? I told them to stay at the inn until the wagon was repaired. I charged them nothing. How could I? And insisted that they eat as much as they needed. The children were thin, too thin, and they looked at the stew I served them as though it were the finest feast in all the kingdoms. That first night, Aldric played for them, not the complex ballads he usually performed, but simple songs, children's songs, nursery rhymes, playful tunes about animals and seasons and silly situations. The children, who had been subdued and quiet since arriving, began to smile, then to laugh, then to sing along, their high voices joining Aldric's rough baritone in choruses about frogs and rabbits and a cat who thought he was a king. The parents wept, silently, trying to hide it from the children, but I saw. The father's shoulders shook as he sat by the fire, his face buried in his hands. The mother held her youngest on her lap and let the tears run freely down her cheeks, making no move to wipe them away. Later, when the children were asleep in the warmest corner of the common room, wrapped in blankets I had pulled from my own bed, the father approached me. "I cannot repay you," he said. His voice was thick with shame. "We have nothing. The journey has taken everything we had. There is nothing to repay. You have fed us, sheltered us, given us more than we had any right to expect." He looked at Aldric, who was cleaning his lute by the fire, the lamplight gleaming on the worn wood. "He made my children laugh. Do you understand what that means? They have not laughed in months. Not since we lost the farm, not since we began this journey into the unknown." His voice cracked. "They laughed. I put my hand on his shoulder. This is what the inn is for. This is why my father built it. You are welcome here, all of you, for as long as you need to stay. They stayed 5 days while the wagon was repaired. Each evening, Aldric played for the children, and through the children for the parents, for me, for whoever else happened to be present. The music transformed them. The children grew louder, bolder, more like children should be. The parents' faces relaxed, the lines of worry smoothing as though years had lifted from their shoulders. When they finally left, the wagon repaired and restocked with supplies from my own stores, the mother pressed something into my hand. It was a small carved figure, a bird, its wings outstretched in flight, the wood polished smooth by years of handling. It belonged to my grandmother, she said. It is the only thing of value we have left. Please take it as thanks. I tried to refuse, but she would not hear it. You gave us more than shelter, she said. You gave us hope. That is worth more than any heirloom. The little bird sits on my desk now, beside this diary. I look at it often when I write. The 8th day of the ice moon. The solstice approaches. In 4 days, we will reach the longest night of the year, that peculiar turning point when the darkness reaches its peak and begins imperceptibly at first to recede. I have always found the solstice to be a time of reflection, a moment to look back at the year that has passed and forward to the year that is coming. Aldric has been working on his composition with renewed intensity. The melody has begun to take shape now. I hear it drifting up from the common room in the early mornings, each iteration slightly different, but recognizably the same piece. Sometimes he sings along wordless sounds that might become lyrics, or might remain as pure vocalization. It is almost ready, he said this morning. Another few days, perhaps. It wants to be finished before the solstice, I think. That feels right. Will you play it for the guests? He considered the question. I will play it for whoever is here on the longest night. It seems fitting. A new song for the turning of the year. This afternoon, a tinker arrived. He was an older man, white-bearded, and weather-beaten, with a pack on his back that jingled with the tools of his trade. He repairs kettles and pans, he said, sharpens knives and scissors, fixes anything metal that needs fixing. He travels a circuit through the villages and settlements, appearing at each one in a predictable pattern that has remained unchanged for 30 years. I know this inn, he said, settling into a chair by the fire with a sigh of relief. I stopped here when your father ran it. Good man, your father. Fair prices, honest measure, always kept a warm fire. You knew my father? Met him a dozen times at least. Used to repair his pots when they wore through. The tinker chuckled, a dry rustling sound. He had a particular way with lids, your father did. Could never seem to keep them from denting. I felt a sudden unexpected warmth spread through my chest. It had been years since anyone spoke of my father. Years since I had heard his name from lips other than my own. The tinker's words were like a window opening into the past, letting in light and air from a time I had thought sealed away. We talked for hours that evening, the tinker and I. He told me stories of my father I'd never heard. Small things, ordinary things, moments that meant nothing in themselves, but together painted a picture of a man I realized I had known only partially. My father, as a young man, before I was born. My father joking with travelers, arguing good-naturedly with merchants, once chasing a stray dog through the common room with a broom while guests looked on in amusement. He loved this place, the tinker said. You could see it in how he cared for it. Every board, every stone, every timber. He treated them like they were precious things, like they mattered. They do matter, I said, to me. I can see that. The tinker's eyes were kind in the firelight. You have his way about you. The same patience, the same attention. He would be proud, I think, to see what you have done here. Aldric played that night, and the tinker listened with his eyes half closed, a peaceful expression on his weathered face. But when the music ended, he roused himself enough to speak. That is a rare gift, he said to Aldric. I have heard many musicians in my travels. Few have touched me as you do. Music touches what words cannot reach, Aldric replied. Aye, that is true. The tinker yawned and stretched. I will stay tomorrow, if you will have me. There is much here that needs mending. I saw several pots in the kitchen that could use attention, and the hinges on the stable door are nearly rusted through. He stayed 3 days in the end, working his way through a list of repairs that grew longer each time he examined something new. He charged me nothing for his labor. Call it payment for the music, he said, and left behind an inn that was better maintained than it had been in years. On his last night, he gave me something, a small metal object shaped like a star, with my father's initials scratched into the back. He gave this to me 20 years ago, the tinker said. Said it was a luck charm his mother had made him. Told me to pass it on to someone who needed it more than he did. He pressed it into my palm. I think he would want you to have it back. I wept that night, not from sadness, or not entirely from sadness, from gratitude, from the recognition that my father was still present in this world, remembered by people I had never met, his kindness rippling outward through time in ways I could not have imagined. The little star sits on my desk now, beside the carved bird and this diary. The collection is growing. Objects left behind by travelers, tokens of connection, physical evidence that love and kindness leave traces in the world. The 12th day of the ice moon. Midwinter approaches. The nights are long now. Impossibly long, it seems, the darkness settling over the crossroads shortly after noon, and not lifting until well past what should be morning. The sun, when it appears, is a pale disk that barely clears the southern horizon before beginning its descent again. This is the hardest season for an inn. Fewer travelers venture out. Those who do are desperate or driven, unable to wait for gentler weather. The roads grow treacherous with ice, and even the most experienced horsemen think twice before attempting the mountain passes. Many of my neighbors to the south have closed their establishments entirely, waiting out the cold in their own homes, preserving their supplies for the lean months ahead. But the Crossroads Inn remained open. It has always remained open through every winter. My father kept it, and through every winter I have kept it since. There are always some who need shelter, some who cannot wait for spring, some who find themselves caught between destinations when the snow begins to fall. And now there is music. Aldric has been with us for 3 months. 3 months of songs and stories, of evenings by the fire and mornings watching the sunrise through frost-covered glass. 3 months of something I did not know I was missing until he arrived. He has grown quieter as winter has deepened. Not unhappy. I do not think he is unhappy, but more inward, more contemplative. He plays less in the evenings and more in the early mornings when the common room is empty and the only light comes from the white candle on the mantel and the faint glow of dawn beginning to touch the eastern sky. I asked him once if he was well. "I'm thinking," he said. "I am trying to decide something." "What?" He shook his head. "I will tell you when I have decided." I did not press him. I have learned in my years of keeping the inn that people reveal themselves in their own time. Pushing them only makes them retreat further into themselves. But I have been watching him. I cannot help it. There is something in his manner that speaks of crossroads, not the physical crossroads outside my door, but the internal kind, the moments when a person must choose between paths that will lead to very different destinations. Last week, something happened that I must record, though I am not entirely sure what it means. A traveler arrived late at night, later than most, the moon already high overhead, and the temperature fallen to the kind of cold that makes breath freeze in the air. I heard the knocking from my room and came downstairs to find a man standing at the door, wrapped in furs, his face so covered against the cold that I could see nothing but his eyes. "I need shelter," he said. His voice was rough, as though he hadn't spoken in days. "Just for the night." I let him in, of course. That is what the inn is for. I stoked the fire, heated water for tea, prepared a simple meal from what remained in the kitchen. He ate quickly, mechanically, barely tasting the food. His eyes kept moving to the white candle on the mantel, then away, then back again. Aldric was not in the common room. He had retired early that evening, complaining of a headache brought on by the change in weather. But the man seemed to be listening for something nonetheless, his head tilted slightly, as though waiting for a sound that did not come. "I heard there was a minstrel here," he said finally. "There is. He is resting tonight." The man nodded slowly. "I knew a minstrel once, long ago in another life. He played at the court of King Aldric in the Eastern Kingdom. I felt something shift in the room, though nothing visible had changed. Many minstrels have played at many courts. This one was special, the best I ever heard. But he left, walked out without a word, disappeared. The king was furious, sent men to find him. The man's eyes met mine, and I saw something hard in them, something calculating. The king is dead now, has been for 3 years. The hunt was called off long ago, but I still wonder sometimes where that minstrel went. I said nothing. I poured tea into a mug and set it before him, letting the silence stretch. The man drank his tea, and his shoulders seemed to relax slightly. "I am not here to cause trouble," he said. "Whatever else I may have been, those days are behind me. I just wanted to know if he was still alive, if he was still playing." "Many minstrels pass through the crossroads," I said carefully. "This is a busy route, even in winter." "Yes." He finished his tea and stood. "I will take a pallet in the common room if one is available. I must leave early, before dawn if possible." I gave him a blanket and pointed him toward the warmest corner. He settled in without another word, and within minutes his breathing had deepened into sleep. I stood by the fire for a long time after that, watching the flames and thinking. Then I climbed the stairs to Aldric's room and knocked softly on his door. "Come in." He was sitting by the window, wrapped in a blanket, his lute beside him on the bed. The moonlight streaming through the glass made his face look carved from silver. "There is a man downstairs," I said. "He is asking about a minstrel who played for King Aldric. He says the hunt was called off years ago. He says he means no harm." Aldric was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "I heard him arrive. I heard him speaking to you. What do you want me to do?" He turned to look at me, and his expression was strange, peaceful almost, despite the circumstances. "Nothing. Let him sleep. Let him leave in the morning. He will not find what he is looking for here. But what he is looking for no longer exists." Aldric picked up his lute and held it against his chest. "The minstrel who played for King Aldric died 5 years ago when he walked out of that palace. What remains is something different, something born from the ashes of who I used to be. That man down there, whoever he is chasing a ghost." I wanted to argue, to press him for more, but something in his voice told me the conversation was over. I nodded once and returned to my room, where I lay awake for a long time, listening to the wind and wondering what the morning would bring. The man was gone before dawn, as he had said he would be. He left a silver coin on his pallet, far more than the night's lodging was worth, and no other trace of his presence. Aldric came down for breakfast as usual, and neither of us mentioned what had happened. But something changed after that night. I cannot say exactly what, but there is a resolve in Aldric now that was not there before. A sense of decision made, a path chosen. He plays with a different quality, a kind of fierce tenderness that brings tears to the eyes of hardened travelers and makes even the most cynical guests fall silent. The 5th day of the snow moon, the solstice has passed. The longest night of the year is behind us. And now, inch by inch, day by day, the light is returning. It is imperceptible at first. A few extra minutes of twilight, a slightly later sunset, but it is there. The world is turning toward spring. Aldric has been with us for 4 months. 4 months of music and stories, of firelight and snow, of something I have come to depend on without realizing it. I wake each morning expecting to hear the soft sound of scales drifting up from the common room. I plan my days around the evenings when travelers will gather to listen. I have come to think of him not as a guest, but as something closer to family, though I would never say so aloud, and I suspect he knows it anyway. Last night, the inn was full. A group of travelers, 6 of them, from 3 different directions, had converged on the crossroads at the same time, all seeking shelter from a storm that had blown in from the west. There were 2 merchants from the southern lowlands, a pair of brothers heading home after burying their father in a distant village, a young woman traveling to meet the man she was to marry, and an old scholar with no stated destination, just a desire to see one more winter before the end. They ate together, these strangers, seated around the large table near the fire. They shared bread and stew and stories as travelers do, discovering points of connection. The young woman's fiancé was from the same region as one of the merchants. The scholar had once taught at the monastery the brother's father had attended in his youth. And then Aldric played. He played for hours, song after song, melody after melody, some familiar and some I had never heard. The travelers listened, rapt, their earlier conversations forgotten. The fire crackled and the white candle burned, and the snow fell outside the windows, and for a time the common room of the Crossroads Inn became something more than a shelter. It became a place suspended between moments, between lives, between the world that was and the world that would be. When Aldric finally set down his lute, the silence that followed was not empty. It was full of everything the music had stirred up, every memory and hope and unspoken feeling that the songs had touched. The old scholar was the first to speak. "I have traveled for 60 years, he said. His voice was thin but clear. "I have seen wonders and horrors, beauty and ugliness, the best and worst of what humans are capable of. But I do not think I have ever experienced anything quite like what I experienced tonight." The young woman wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I was so afraid," she said, "of the journey, of the marriage, of the life waiting for me. But right now I'm not afraid at all. I do not understand how that is possible." One of the brothers nodded slowly. "Our father loved music," he said. "He used to say it was the voice of the divine, speaking through human hands. I never understood what he meant until tonight." Aldric sat quietly through all of this, his hands resting on his lute. When the travelers had finished speaking, he looked at me, just a glance, quick and significant, and then excused himself to his room. I stayed up late that night, cleaning the common room, banking the fire, making sure all the guests were comfortable. The storm had passed by the time I finished, and the sky outside was clear and cold and full of stars. I stood at the window for a long time, looking out at the crossroads. The ancient oak tree was laden with snow, its branches hanging low under the weight. The road stretched away in both directions, silver in the moonlight, leading to all the places I would never go. And I thought about Aldric, about the music he made, about the gift he had given not just to me, but to everyone who passed through these doors. I thought about what it meant to find one's purpose, to become the instrument through which something larger than oneself could flow. I am an innkeeper. That is what I do, who I am, what I was born to be. But Aldric reminded me of something I had forgotten, that my purpose is not just to provide shelter and food, but to create a space where people can be transformed, where the weary can find rest, where the lost can find direction, where the broken can find, if not healing, at least the hope that healing is possible. The white candle burned on the mantel, steady and unwavering. The old woman who gave it to me had said, "Welcome them all." I understand now, better than I ever have, what she meant. The 20th day of the ice moon. The solstice passed 3 days ago. Aldric played his new composition on the longest night, as he had promised. There were 5 travelers present that evening, a merchant couple returning from the northern trade routes, 2 young students traveling to a university in the south, and an elderly man who never gave his name or destination, only sat quietly by the fire and watched the flames as though reading secrets in their dance. We ate a special meal that night. I had been saving certain provisions for the solstice: a haunch of smoked ham, preserved apples spiced with cinnamon, a small cask of wine that I had been given as payment by a grateful traveler the previous summer. The common room smelled of warmth and plenty, of celebration against the dark. After the meal, when the dishes had been cleared and the fire built up high, Aldric took his place in his usual corner. He held his lute for a long moment without playing, his eyes closed, his breathing slow and measured. The room fell silent, even the crackling fire seeming to quiet itself in anticipation. And then he began. The composition was unlike anything I'd heard from him before. It started slowly, almost tentatively, single notes plucked from the strings like drops of water falling into a still pool. Then the melody began to emerge, rising from the scattered notes like dawn rising from darkness. It was a song about endings and beginnings. I understood that immediately, though there were no words. It spoke of the turning of seasons, the closing of doors, the lighting of candles against the night. It spoke of grief and hope intertwined, of letting go and holding on, of the strange comfort that comes from knowing that all things pass, including pain. The melody built slowly, gathering complexity and depth. At times it sounded like a lullaby, at times like a hymn. There were passages that made me think of my father, of the fever that took him, of the months of learning to live without him. There were passages that made me think of the travelers I had welcomed over the years, their stories, their sorrows, their small kindnesses that had accumulated into something precious. When the song finally ended, the silence that followed was absolute. No one moved, no one spoke. The fire had burned down to embers, and the common room was lit only by the white candle on the mantel, its flame burning steady and bright. The elderly man who had never spoken was weeping. Silent tears ran down his weathered cheeks, dropping onto his folded hands. The merchant couple held each other, their heads bowed together. The two students sat with their mouths slightly open, as though they had forgotten how to close them. "That," the elderly man finally said, his voice barely above a whisper, "that was the most beautiful thing I have ever heard." Aldric bowed his head. "It was a gift, not from me, through me. I have been trying to find this song for months, and tonight it finally revealed itself." "What is it called?" Aldric was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "The Crossing." I understood then what he had made, not just a song, but a meditation. On the crossroads where we stood, on the threshold between one year and the next, on all the crossings that define our lives, the crossing from sorrow to acceptance, from loneliness to connection, from darkness to light. The guests retired late that night, reluctant to break the spell that the music had woven. I stayed up after they had gone, sitting by the dying fire with Aldric, sharing a last measure of wine. "Thank you," I said. "For what?" "For that song, for all the songs, for being here this winter when I did not know I needed company." He smiled, and his eyes were bright in the candlelight. "Thank you for welcoming me, for giving me a place to remember who I am supposed to be." We sat in silence for a while longer, listening to the wind outside and the settling of the fire. The white candle burned on as it always did, as it always would. "I will leave soon," Aldric said finally, "when the road's clear. A few more weeks, perhaps." "I know. But I meant what I said before. I will come back. Not because I have to, because I want to, because this place has become part of me, and I have become part of it. You will always be welcome here. I know that too." He set down his wine cup and rose, stretching the stiffness from his limbs. "Good night, innkeeper. Sleep well." "Good night, minstrel." He climbed the stairs to his room, and I heard the door close softly behind him. I sat alone for a while longer, watching the embers fade to ash, thinking about crossings and thresholds and the strange ways our lives interweave. The 15th day of the snow moon. Aldric came to me this morning with a look on his face that I recognized. I had seen it before on other travelers, at other times. The look of someone who has made a decision and is preparing to act on it. "The thaw is coming," he said. "I can feel it in the air. A few more weeks, and the roads will be passable again." "Yes," I agreed, though my heart was heavy. I have been thinking about what comes next. He sat down at the table nearest the fire, where he had sat so many evenings before, where he had played so many songs. I have been thinking about it for a long time, actually. Since that night the man came asking questions, I sat down across from him. "And what have you decided?" "When I came here," he said, "I was running from who I had been, from what I had become, from a life that had hollowed me out and left nothing but the shell of a performer. I thought I would keep running forever, one crossroads to the next, one end to the next, always moving, never staying long enough to matter or be mattered to." He looked around the common room at the stone fireplace and the hanging herbs and the white candle burning on the mantel. "But this place changed me. You changed me, not through anything you said or did, but simply by being what you are, a keeper of the threshold, a guardian of the in-between. You showed me that there is another way to live, that one can stop running without giving up, that one can stay in one place and still be part of the great flow of the world." I did not speak. I could not speak. "I am not going to stay forever," Aldric said. "The road is in my blood as surely as the music is. I cannot give it up entirely, and I do not think I should. But I am not going to run any more. I am going to walk slowly, deliberately, with purpose. I am going to play in village squares and country inns for farmers and fishermen and all the ordinary people who deserve beauty as much as any king." He reached into his pocket and withdrew something, a small leather pouch, heavier than it looked. "This is what I have earned since I arrived," he said, pressing it into my hands. "From the travelers who insisted on paying for the music, from the merchants who tipped generously, from the scholar who had more silver than he knew what to do with. I tried to refuse it, but they would not let me." I opened the pouch. Inside was more coin than I had expected, gold mixed with silver, enough to see the inn through a lean season or make repairs that had long been needed. "I cannot accept this," I said. "You already have." Aldric smiled, and his eyes were bright. "Consider it payment for what you gave me. Shelter, food, a place to remember who I was meant to be. It is not nearly enough, but it is what I have." I closed my fingers around the pouch. "When will you leave?" "When the roads are clear. A few more weeks, perhaps a month." He looked toward the window where the morning light was growing stronger. "I want to see one more sunrise from that room. I want to play one more evening for whoever happens to be here. And then I will walk on." "Will you come back?" He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "There is a song I know, an old song from a region far to the south. It tells the story of a bird that migrates with the seasons, flying north. Summer south in winter, never staying in one place for more than a few months. But in the song, the bird has a nest, a home it returns to year after year, no matter how far it flies." He picked up his lute and played a few notes, a melody that sounded like flight and return, like leaving and coming back, like the endless cycle of the seasons themselves. I will come back, he said, when the road grows long and my fingers grow tired and I need to remember why I play. I will come back to this crossroads, to this inn, to this fire, and you will welcome me as you welcome everyone, and I will play for you as I play for everyone. Yes, I said, I will always. The snow continues to fall outside, but it is lighter now than it was a week ago. The worst of winter is behind us. Soon the ice will crack and the rivers will run, and the first green shoots will appear in the kitchen garden. Aldric is still here, still playing, still filling the common room with music that transforms, but I find myself treasuring each evening now in a way I did not before, knowing that they are numbered, that he will leave, that the silence when he goes will be profound. And yet, it is not really silence, is it? He leaves something behind. All travelers do, but some more than others. The music will linger in the stones of this place. The memories of songs will hover in the air like wood smoke that never quite dissipates. And when he returns, because he will return, I believe that now it will be like no time has passed at all. That is the nature of true connection, I think. It exists outside of time, outside of distance, outside of the ordinary rules that govern human relationships. When you share something real with another person, when you see them clearly and are seen clearly in return, you create a bond that no separation can fully break. The 8th day of the thaw moon. Spring has begun. The snow is melting, slowly but unmistakably. Rivers of water run down the road, turning the crossroads to mud. The icicles that hung from the stable roof have fallen one by one, shattering on the ground below. The ancient oak tree is budding, tiny green shoots appearing at the tips of branches that have been bare for months, and today Aldric left. I helped him pack his bag. He carries so little, just a change of clothes and a few supplies, the purse much lighter now than when he arrived, and I walked with him to the crossroads. He stood there for a long moment looking at the oak tree, at the two roads stretching away in their different directions. East, I think, he said, toward the coast. I have not smelled the sea in years. Safe travels, I said. It was all I could manage. He turned to me then, and his eyes were full of things I could not name. Thank you, he said, for the shelter, for the meals, for listening when I played, and for not listening when I needed silence. Thank you for giving me a place to remember who I am. Thank you for the music, I said. Thank you for reminding me why I keep this inn. He smiled, that slow, warm feel that had become so familiar over the winter months. And then he did something unexpected. He reached into his bag and withdrew something wrapped in cloth. This is for you, he said, pressing it into my hands. I unwrapped it. Inside was a small wooden figure, a carved lute, no bigger than my palm, crafted with exquisite detail. The grain of the wood matched Aldric's instrument exactly. I made it during the long nights, he said, when I could not sleep, when my mind was too full of thoughts. It isn't much, but I wanted you to have something to remember me by. I held the little lute in my hands, feeling its weight, its smoothness, the care that had gone into its making. I will put it on the mantel, I said, next to the white candle, so that when travelers ask about it, I can tell them the story of the minstrel who stayed for a season. Aldric laughed, a real laugh, full and warm. I hope you tell it well. I will try. He shouldered his bag, shifted his lute beneath his arm, and stepped onto the eastern road. I watched him walk away, slowly, as he always walked, with the measured pace of someone who has learned that haste serves no purpose. When he reached the first bend, he turned and raised his hand in farewell. I raised mine in return, and then he was gone, around the curve of the road, swallowed by the spring morning. I stood there for a long time, listening to the drip of melting snow and the distant song of returning birds. The crossroads was quiet, empty except for me and the ancient oak tree and the inn standing sturdy and welcoming behind me. But it did not feel empty. It felt full of memory, full of music, full of everything that Aldric had brought and left behind. I walked back to the inn and went inside. The common room was warm, the fire I'd built that morning still burning bright. The white candle glowed on the mantel, steady and unwavering. I set the little carved lute beside it. It looked right there, I thought, like it had always belonged.
And so ends tonight's entry. The minstrel has gone, walking east toward the sea, carrying his father's lute and all the songs he has gathered over a lifetime of wandering. But his music remains, in the stones of the inn, in the hearts of the travelers who heard him play, in the memory of winter evenings filled with melody and warmth. This is the nature of connection, of art, of the quiet gifts we give each other without knowing their true value. They linger. They endure. They become part of the places and people they touch. Sleep now, dear listener. Rest your weary mind and let the peace of the crossroads settle over you. The fire is warm, the hour is late, and tomorrow, as always, is another day. The inn stands at the crossroads, as it has always stood. The white candle burns on the mantel, as it has burned since that first winter. And somewhere on the roads of the world, a minstrel walks east toward the sea, carrying songs that will touch hearts and transform lives wherever he goes. He will return. I believe that as surely as I believe in the turning of the seasons. And when he does, the fire will be lit, the stew will be warming, and I will be here to welcome him home. That is what innkeepers do. We wait. We welcome. We tend the flame that guides travelers through the dark. It is not a glamorous life. It is not a life of adventure or excitement. But it is a life of purpose, of meaning, of small kindnesses that ripple outward in ways we cannot predict. And sometimes, rarely, but sometimes, it is a life of music. The carved lute sits on my mantel now next to the white candle that never dims. The carved bird rests on my desk beside the metal star and this diary. Small tokens, simple objects, but each one carries a story, a memory, a connection to someone whose path crossed mine at this crossroads. I have learned much this winter, about music, about hospitality, about the strange alchemy that transforms strangers into family, if only for a night, if only for a season. Aldric taught me that the truest songs are not the ones we compose, but the ones we become. We are all music, in our way. Melodies shaped by experience, harmonies created by connection, rhythms that pulse beneath our conscious thought. When we share ourselves with others, when we open our doors and our hearts to those who need shelter, we are playing a song that the universe itself wants to hear. The crossroads waits outside my door, patient and eternal. The roads stretch away in four directions, leading to places I will never see. But I do not need to see them. My place is here, tending the fire, welcoming the travelers, bearing witness to the songs that pass through. It is enough, it is more than enough. Until next time, may your road rise to meet you. May the wind be at your back, and may you always find shelter when you need it most. Good night.